Before we begin the story, let us know where you're watching from by leaving a comment below. If you enjoy this video, don't forget to like and subscribe. Have a wonderful day. Enjoy the story. Clara Kim ran through the streets, clutching her crumpled resume in one hand, her heart racing like a Formula One car. She was late for the most important interview of her life. If I miss this interview, I'll have to sell my kidneys. And worse, I don't even know how much a used kidney is worth, she muttered, briefless, stumbling along the way. But there she was, just a few steps from the company. All she needed to do was take a deep breath and look like someone whose life was at least somewhat in order. That's when she saw it, a sleek black car parked in front of the building, tinted windows and a perfect reflection. Great, a first-class mirror, she murmured, stopping right in front of the passenger window. With quick movements, she started adjusting her bra inside her blouse, twisting her body like an Olympic gymnast. Then she pulled out her lipstick, applied it with full concentration, and smiled to check the result and froze. A big, bright piece of lettuce was stuck between her teeth. Seriously? She groaned. Panicked, she tried to remove the intruder with her finger, making a face worthy of a comedy movie. And then it happened, the soft hum of the window rolling down slowly. Clara froze, hand still in her mouth, eyes wide open. Inside the car, an absurdly handsome man stared at her perfect hair, sharp suit, and that expression that clearly said, "I saw everything from start to finish. Need help with that? Or would you prefer a professional mirror?" he asked, his voice calm, slightly amused. Clara blinked twice. Her mind screamed, "Run!" Her legs, for some reason, stayed glued to the ground. She wiped her fingers on her pants, lifted her chin, and replied, "Let me know if you find my dignity anywhere. I think I dropped it somewhere in the middle of this humiliation." The man chuckled, just a little, just enough for his eyes to shine. She blushed to the core. "Well, the window was staring at me first. So you decided to seduce it with lipstick and bra adjustments?" "It was an accident. I don't usually adjust my bra in random cars. Sounds like a case of a broken mirror and a salad, and the universe conspiring against you." He rested his arm on the window frame. "The universe is responsible for a lot of things, but in this case, I think it was just the lettuce." Clara huffed. "Look, I have to go. I have a job interview, a serious one, a life-changing one." "Well, if you make half the impression in there that you did out here, you might as well ask for a promotion already." Before he could say another word, Clara checked the time, gasped, and shouted, "I'm late," before dashing toward the entrance. "And you, Mr. Owner of his own car, good luck with your movie star face." He gave a small salute. "And you've got this, Miss Bra Emergency." She disappeared into the building like a hurricane of wrinkled blazer and shattered dignity. On the interview floor, she took a deep breath and tried to collect herself. The receptionist greeted her with a warm smile. "You may go in, Miss Kim. Mr. Hayes will be with you shortly." "All right." Of course, she smiled. Still a little dazed. "I've never been more emotionally stable in my life." She stepped into the conference room modern, all glass. She perched on the edge of the chair, her heart still pounding like a drumline in a parade. Then the door opened. Clara turned with a practiced smile and froze. Ethan Hayes walked in, as if he were strutting down a runway of pure confidence, impeccable suit, tablet in hand, and that same teasing smile at the corner of his lips. Clara choked on her own breath. "Literally you," she shrieked, jumping up so fast she almost knocked over her chair. He looked at her, feigning surprise. "Me? Were you expecting someone else?" You're the CEO, and you're the lady with the lipstick and the lettuce? I want to disappear," Clara muttered, covering her face. "Relax, I don't judge too much." He sat down smoothly. "Make yourself comfortable, but if you need to adjust anything else, please give me a heads up, just so I don't get startled. This is a nightmare. I must be dreaming. That's the only explanation." "Welcome to your interview, Miss Kim. Don't worry, whatever you do now, it won't be weirder than what happened outside." Clara sank into the chair. "Is it too late to jump out the window?" Ethan smiled as he opened her resume. "I'd close the window before you try. You seem dangerous." Clara was convinced that the universe had a questionable sense of humor, and a cruel one. She was sitting in front of the most handsome, most elegant man who was now officially her new boss. After publicly embarrassing herself right in front of his car, Ethan Hayes skimmed through her resume with narrowed eyes, as if analyzing each line for signs of insanity. So, Clara Kim, degree in business administration, a technical course in marketing, experience as a financial assistant in 2 places. He looked up, and no mention of sidewalk acrobatics or spontaneous stand-up performances through car windows. Clara smiled nervously. I'm still updating that section of my resume. I thought about adding street performer as a side gig, but it felt too informal. Oh, what a shame. I would have hired you just for that. Ethan crossed his arms, leaning against the desk. Have you ever worked with technology before? Yes, I have. I turned on the microwave yesterday, and it worked cutting-edge technology. He laughed, shaking his head slightly. We're off to a good start now. Tell me, why do you want to work here? Clara took a deep breath. She could switch to serious interview mode now. But honestly, there wasn't much left to lose dignity that had already vanished on the sidewalk. Because I'm good. Even coming from a place where no one bets on you, even without a Harvard degree or connections at fancy dinners. I work hard, I don't give up, and if someone gives me a chance, I make it count. Ethan's smile faded for a moment. He looked at Clara differently now, not with amusement, but as if he had heard more than he expected. That was honest and rare, he said. I can lie too if you'd prefer. I'm great at it. Clara sat up straighter. For example, I'm completely calm right now and definitely not thinking about escaping through that window over there. Ethan let out a quiet chuckle. I like people who don't hide behind scripted answers, but I also like testing limits. Clara frowned. Testing limits? He twirled his pen between his fingers, looking at her with a playful gleam in his eyes. For example, what if I told you that someone in this room already has an opinion about you? She raised an eyebrow. I'd ask if that opinion includes clumsy, talkative, and mildly traumatized by lettuce. And what if I told you it includes authentic, unpredictable, and strangely interesting? Clara's heart skipped a beat or two. She tried to respond, but the words wouldn't come out, so she took a deep breath, adjusted her hair, and said, I'd say that person has questionable taste, but excellent judgment. Ethan smiled fully now. He closed the resume slowly. Miss Kim, I think we'll be seeing each other again very soon. Clara blinked, surprised. What do you mean? Is it over already? I've seen everything I needed to see. He stood up gracefully. And I can assure you, you've passed the hardest part of this interview. You're hired. What part? Being yourself, even when everything goes wrong. Clara stared at him, unsure whether to laugh, cry, or run before he changed his mind. Well, thank you, Mr. Hayes. Ethan, just Ethan for now. She nodded, still confused, standing up slowly. As she left the room, she could still feel his gaze on her back, not one of judgment, but of genuine interest. When the door closed, Clara leaned against the hallway wall, taking a deep breath. She ran a hand over her face, unable to believe what had just happened. Most unexpected interview in history, without a doubt, but also maybe the most important one of my life. The alarm went off at 6:00 in the morning, but Clara had already been awake 10 minutes earlier, staring at the ceiling of the small rented room. She shared with the daughter of an elderly woman who talked to her cat as if he were human. First day, she thought, and her heart beat faster. She took a shower, pinned her hair back with a crooked clip, and put on the only white shirt that didn't have sauce stains. She ran her hands over her dress pants, trying to smooth out the deep creases from being folded in the drawer for too long. She looked at herself in the cracked bathroom mirror. All set. You have a functional appearance, she told herself. And now you work at a fancy tech company. Look at you, Clara Kim. Almost an executive. Almost on her way to the company, she got bumped twice on the subway and had half a cup of coffee spilled on her blouse, courtesy of a rushed passenger. It's fine, she thought. It's just coffee. It matches my mood. At the reception desk of Novatech Corp, she was greeted by a friendly assistant who led her to the department where she would start as an administrative assistant for the development team. The floor was sleek and modern, with glass walls, ergonomic chairs, and people dressed as if they were always heading to an important event. Clara walked in slowly, trying to look confident. Her new badge gleamed as it hung around her neck. Hi everyone, I'm Clara. 3 heads turned 2 shy smiles, a polite nod. Then one of her colleagues stepped forward, holding a cup of tea. Clara Kim, right? I'm Sophie. Welcome to the jungle. Thanks. I just hope I make it through the week. Sophie laughed. With that resume and the whole car window incident, you're already a legend around here. Clara's eyes widened. Already? How did you? Sophie nodded toward the side. Someone on the 3rd floor saw everything reflected in the glass. They said you were putting on lipstick, adjusting your bra, and, well, you know the rest. The story spread through half the company before lunch. Clara groaned. Great. First day, and I'm already office folklore. Oh, but you're a charming character. Sophie winked. Come on, let me show you your desk. Clara's workstation was between an artificial plant and a noisy printer. It wasn't the CEO floor, but it was her own little space, and that was enough. A little while later, Ethan Hayes walked down the hall, impeccable black blazer, phone to his ear, purposeful stride. He paused briefly when he saw Clara. Watch out for the coffee and the lettuce, too. Clara's eyes widened, and she choked on the water she was drinking. Sophie nearly spit out her tea. Miss Lettuce, she whispered, as Ethan disappeared down the hall. Oh, please, no. But it was too late. The news spread like Wi-Fi, and before lunchtime, a sticky note was attached to her desk with Miss Lettuce written on it, along with a doodle of a bra. I knew I shouldn't have gotten out of bed today, Clara muttered, dropping her head onto her desk. Relax, Sophie said, laughing. Everyone gets a nickname sooner or later. You were just more efficient. The afternoon was filled with online training and a flood of technical information. Clara did her best to keep up, even though her brain was begging for mercy with each new spreadsheet. At the end of the day, she was filling out a report when a calendar notification popped up. Investor presentation, mandatory attendance, location, Auditorium B, accompanied by CKIM. She read it again and again. Sophie, who scheduled this? Huh? Let me check. Sophie clicked around on her computer. Huh. It was Ethan Hayes himself. Clara felt her stomach turn. Me? In an investor presentation on my first day? Looks like he has faith in you or wants to see me trip on stage and go viral on LinkedIn. On the way to the auditorium, she tried to stay focused, breathe, pretend she wasn't about to be thrown to the sharks. Ethan was waiting at the entrance. Clara, punctual. That's rare around here. Hi. So you really want me in this presentation with you? I like surprises. You're good at them. I usually don't do presentations. I sit in the back and eat cookies. Today, you're trading cookies for the front of the stage. Just follow along, observe. You don't have to say anything unless you want to. Clara took a deep breath. Okay, but if I pass out, I expect hazard pay. They walked into the auditorium. Executives and investors filled the room, all dressed as if they had stepped out of an expensive magazine. Ethan presented the project confidently, but at one point, there was an awkward silence after an unexpected question about how younger audiences would respond to the product. Ethan turned to Clara. Any thoughts? Clara froze. All eyes were on her. Maybe using humor and real-life situations in the marketing show that technology isn't just for experts, but also for people who feel like hackers just by using a microwave. A few chuckles spread through the room. Someone nodded. Another person commented, "Good point." Ethan gave a subtle smile, as if to say, "I knew it." As they left the auditorium, he remarked, "Congratulations. You survived your first day just barely, but I survived. And you even got a nickname that will haunt me forever. Maybe it'll become your trademark." Clara laughed, and for the first time that day, she felt like she truly belonged. Clara Kim woke up feeling like her brain was still in sleep mode. Her body, however, seemed to have already switched to emergency mode, as if sensing that the day ahead would be full of surprises. She sat up in bed, glanced at her phone, and let out a dramatic sigh. Second day of work, and I still have a job. Is this a miracle or a clerical error? She got up, brushed her teeth, and put on her best pair of dress pants, the least wrinkled ones, and a beige blouse with slightly uneven buttons, but plenty of personality. She slipped on the only pair of heels she had that were still in one piece, tied her hair back, and applied a more subtle shade of lipstick. No lettuce, no surprises, no disasters today, she thought. As soon as she arrived at Novatech Corp, the receptionist recognized her with a smile and a quick nod. Clara responded with an awkward wave and headed straight to her department. Sophie was already there, leaning over a spreadsheet and chewing on a protein bar like it was cardboard. "Survived the initiation, Miss Lettuce?" Sophie asked, without looking away from the screen. "Barely, but I'm alive." "Great, because there's an important meeting today, and apparently you've been called in to attend again." Clara stopped in the middle of the hallway. "You're kidding. Another presentation?" "Not exactly. Today is a big alignment meeting with investors and strategic partners, the kind where everyone pretends they know what they're doing and prays they don't get called on." Clara's eyes widened. "And I was picked?" Why? Rumor has it Ethan liked your down-to-earth touch in the last presentation. He wants to see if you can do it again, but with less improvisation and more composure. I don't even know what composure is before 10 in the morning. Then grab some coffee, freshen up, and pretend you were born ready. Clara tried to laugh, but her stomach was already in knots. She went to the office kitchen, grabbed a cup of coffee, and returned to her desk, where an email was waiting for her. Executive meeting, 10:00 a.m. on the 25th floor. Dress code, confidence. Dress code, confidence, she muttered. Can I rent that by the hour? 20 minutes before the meeting, Clara went to the bathroom for a final touch-up. She fixed her hair, checked her teeth, no veggies stuck. Thank God, and took a deep breath. As she stepped out, her heels clicked confidently against the shiny floor until a loud snap echoed through the hallway. She froze, looked down at her right foot. The heel had snapped off, not slightly bent, not cracked, completely broken, like it had been chewed up by a wild animal. No, not now, she whispered, one hand on the wall, the other on her forehead. She looked around for help, nothing. The hallway was empty. She tried walking on the side of her foot, but she looked like a drunken penguin. Back to the bathroom, she rummaged through her emergency stash, found a hair tie, a coin, and duct tape. God, if this works, I swear I'll never buy thrift store heels again. She knelt down, pulled off the broken heel, taped it up, reinforced it with the hair tie, and prayed it looked intentional. The result? It looked like a 5-year-old had wrapped her shoe in toilet paper, but at least she could walk. 3 minutes late, Clara stepped into the elevator and hit the button for the 25th floor. The doors began to close when, just like in a movie, a hand shot in to stop them. Ethan Hayes stepped in dark gray suit, crisp white shirt, serious expression, a faint scent of expensive coffee, and embedded sarcasm. Miss Kim, always on time, adding your own dramatic flair to the entrance. I see. Clara forced a smile. Style is everything, Mr. Hayes. He glanced down at her shoe, raised an eyebrow. Is that duct tape? It's creativity and survival, two very important skills in a corporate environment. Ethan chuckled, shaking his head. You're definitely not from HR, and you're definitely not from planet Earth. The elevator rode up in silence for a few seconds. The tension was oddly light, amusing even. As they reached their floor, Ethan turned to her before stepping out. Try not to slip on stage. Investors don't usually enjoy acrobatics unless I do it in slow motion. They entered the conference room, floor-to-ceiling windows, a panoramic city view, an oval table, sparkling water, and sugar-free biscuits. Clara sat next to Ethan, trying not to show that her sock was sticking to the duct tape. The meeting began. Data, charts, growth projections, discussions on innovation and goals. Clara took notes, even though half the terms sounded like a foreign language. Then it was time to present a new project focused on user experience. Ethan turned to her. Clara, would you like to share what we discussed about audience perception? She didn't remember any such discussion. This was clearly a setup for an improvised response. But she took a deep breath, stood up, careful not to make noise with her Frankenstein shoe, and smiled. Well, what we've noticed is that people want to feel like they're part of the process. They want something easy, intuitive, but also human. Something that doesn't feel like it was made only for people who say cloud computing effortlessly. A few chuckles, some nods. Our idea is to create a lighter interface with simple language and a design that feels welcoming, like an app that says, everything's fine, take a deep breath, and click here. The investors laughed. One of them, wearing a beige suit and with silver hair, even commented, finally, someone who speaks our language. Clara sat back down, her heart racing. Ethan simply said, excellent. After the meeting, as everyone was leaving, he walked up to her. You know, you stole the show, right? I hope it wasn't because of my shoes. That too, but mostly because you made everyone understand something complex in such a simple way. It's a gift, the same one that makes me choose bad coffee and even worse shoes. Ethan looked at her for a moment longer than necessary, his expression almost soft. Do you have plans tonight? Clara blinked twice, 3 times. Is this an invitation? A professional one. The executive team is having dinner with some partners. I thought it would be good for you to come, but of course, change your shoes first. She laughed. As long as I don't trip on the way there, sure. Just tell me if the menu includes all-you-can-eat sushi or more graphs. I'll send you the details by email. And Clara, she turned around. Thanks for today, really. Clara walked to the elevator with her patched-up shoe and a heart beating as fast as the tape holding it together, already worrying about what to wear to such an elegant dinner. Clara stood in her room, staring at her closet like it was a multiple-choice quiz where all the answers were wrong. Black, because it's slimming, plain, so it doesn't draw attention. Long, because I forgot to shave my legs. She pulled out the only black dress that still fit without requiring a miracle or a miracle worker. She slipped on a pair of flats that had danced more than she had at every wedding she'd ever attended, and applied her lipstick with the precision of someone drawing a map. Her phone buzzed. It was the email with the dinner details. French restaurant, 800, dress code, formal, and one important note: no duct tape, please. All right, no duct tape, but if my shoe falls apart again, I'll have to hold it together with a prayer. At the subway station, Clara rode the escalator with the grace of someone who almost tripped twice. She walked 3 blocks to the restaurant, dodging a puddle, an elderly woman with a shopping cart, and a skateboarder who nearly ran her over. When she saw the restaurant's facade, she held her breath. It looked like something straight out of a French movie. Dim lighting, people wearing coats that cost as much as her rent, and a waiter at the door who seemed like he'd just won a posture competition. "Good evening. How may I help you?" he asked, with an accent that had to have been perfected by watching Louvre documentaries. Yes, I'm with Ethan Hayes' group." Clara tried to sound sophisticated, but the backpack on her shoulders wasn't helping. "Mr. Hayes' guest? Guest? No. Employee, a salaried one, I swear. I only accompany him in meetings. I promise." The waiter didn't react. He just nodded and led her to a table in the back. Clara adjusted her dress as she walked, trying not to trip on the plush carpet. And then she saw Ethan, alone, sitting there, wearing a perfectly tailored blazer, holding a glass of wine, and looking like the kind of person who picks wine just because it has a fancy French name. "Where's the team?" she asked, standing there as if she'd just walked into a prank. "They canceled last minute, all of them. Remarkable coincidence, isn't it?" "Uh-huh. Just like when you trip and fall right into your crush's arms, totally unplanned." Ethan smiled. "Have a seat, Clara. It's just a work dinner, with cloth napkins and a waiter who silently judges you." Clara sat down, adjusting the chair, which seemed to have been designed by someone who had never actually sat in one. Just a work dinner in a restaurant where the menu doesn't have prices. This never ends well. Relax. If something is too expensive, we'll just pretend it tastes bad. The waiter returned with the menu. "Good evening. Would you like something to drink?" "Sparkling water and a side of dignity, please," Clara said. Ethan couldn't hold back his laughter. "Red wine for me, and for her, just regular water. The sparkling kind gives me hiccups and embarrassment." The waiter left with a neutral expression. Clara picked up the menu and widened her eyes. Everything was in French. Everything was in fine print. Everything looked suspicious. "What's this? Foie de canard duck liver? And this? Confit de canard duck again, but now it's confit? Don't ask me how." So basically the duck dies twice, and still ends up as both the appetizer and the main course. "Someone needs to tell this duck he's sacrificing way too much." They laughed. The waiter returned. Clara pointed to the first dish with a name she could pronounce. "I'll have this one, the croissant." "Ah, a classic. A French sandwich. Fancy name, but it's just bread and cheese. Perfect. That I can understand." With the food served, they both started eating, trying to maintain some level of composure. Ethan handled his fork like a scalpel, Clara, more like a shovel. "So, Ethan, why me? I mean, why do you invite me to these dinners? I'm starting to feel like some kind of social experiment. You're different." "Is that corporate code for weird?" "No. It's my polite way of saying you do things like this." He gestured toward her. "Like dropping your napkin 3 times and trying to hide it with your foot?" Clara blushed. "I'm practical. I use my feet as an extension of my arms. It's evolution, not clumsiness. And yet you managed to impress a room full of investors yesterday. I thought they were going to throw me out the window. They almost gave you a standing ovation, probably because they thought I'd explode, if they didn't. Or because you talked to them like real people, and that's something a lot of meetings lack. You have a rare skill, stammering and covering it up with jokes." "Exactly," Clara laughed, wiping the corners of her mouth. "And you always been like this? Calm CEO, sophisticated, with hair that looks straight out of a fancy shampoo ad? Oh, absolutely. I was born wearing a blazer with a business plan under my arm. Liar. You look like someone who was a total bookworm in school. I was the kid who corrected the teacher. Wow. I was the one who copied from classmates and still got it wrong. Amazing how we ended up having dinner together. That's the power of networking, or pure chaos. The waiter arrived with dessert, a chocolate creation so perfect that Clara went silent for 5 whole seconds. Is this real, or just for taking pictures? Just don't press too hard. If it falls apart, they might charge you for a Picasso. Clara picked up her spoon with a surgeon's precision. If it collapses, just say it was an emotional earthquake. Ethan laughed, and she, feeling a little shy, smiled back. The atmosphere was light, comfortable, almost like being with an old friend who happened to be absurdly handsome, well-groomed, and rich, but still a friend. When they left the restaurant, the night air was crisp. Clara shivered slightly from the breeze. Ethan took off his jacket and offered it, but she shook her head. Thanks, but I'd probably sweat from panic just wearing that. It's just a jacket. It doesn't bite, but it costs more than my entire wardrobe, and I have a fear of expensive things. Why? Because expensive things are fragile, like stilettos, like hearts with a crush on the boss. Ethan looked at her for a second longer than usual, but didn't say anything. He just smiled. Want me to call you a car? I'm taking the subway. Reality awaits. I can walk you to the station. Only if you don't complain about the subway smell. Only if you don't let me touch the handrails. Those have more DNA than a forensic lab. They laughed together and started walking. The street was quiet, lit by old-fashioned streetlights and glowing storefronts on the other side of the sidewalk. Along the way, they passed a store window with ridiculous mannequins. One was wearing a fur coat with shorts. What is this? Post-apocalyptic fashion? Clara commented. Looks like the mannequin had a fight with the seasons. They reached the subway entrance. Clara stopped and turned to him. That was nice, strangely nice. That was the weirdest dinner I've had all year. Don't you go out much? Only when I have unpredictable company, with a good sense of humor and a talent for disasters. So you like danger? Only the kind that comes with laughter at the end. Clara stepped down the first few stairs, then turned back. Ethan? Yes? If I trip in the lobby tomorrow, will you fire me? Only if you do it with style. Clara went down the stairs with light steps, feeling something different in the air. It wasn't the wind. It wasn't the dinner. It was that kind of feeling that makes the heart lighter than a full stomach. Clara woke up before her alarm, and that was never a good sign. She turned her face into the pillow and remembered the email from the real estate agency she had received the night before. The subject line read, "Final notice before legal action." She read it 3 times and still didn't like it. Her bank account was so empty that the app kept freezing. Okay, universe, I get it. You can stop testing me now. She got up, put on a clean pair of jeans and a black blouse, and tied her hair back in the most practical way possible. She poured some coffee into a travel mug, or more like a mix of coffee and sheer willpower, and rushed out the door. On the subway ride to Manhattan, her mind was elsewhere. At the turnstile, she nearly forgot to swipe her card, and when she got to the office, she made her way to her desk on autopilot. Sophie waved at her with a bagel in hand. "Hey, Miss Lettuce. Sleep well? Sleep? What's that?" Sophie smirked and pointed at her computer screen. "You have a meeting with Ethan at 10:00. Clara nodded and thought, if he fires me, at least I'll save on subway fare. When Clara walked into Ethan's office, he was looking through some papers and drinking coffee without sugar, which, in her opinion, should be a crime. "Good morning, Clara. Have a seat. I have something to show you." She sat down, trying not to look too concerned. "I'm listening. I want you to take charge of a special project. It's something that's been on hold, but has a lot of potential." Clara took the folder he handed her. She read the first few lines. There were numbers, graphs, and words she had to read twice. "This is complex." "It is, but you have the right approach. You're direct, creative, quick, and different." Clara looked at him, surprised. "Me? Really?" "Yes, you. But there's a catch. It'll take extra time. You may have to stay late." "Does it come with extra pay?" Ethan nodded. "It does. You'll be compensated." That's when Clara felt a small wave of relief. "I'll do it." She tried to hide her relief, but Ethan noticed. "Is everything okay?" he asked. Clara hesitated. "More or less just some personal stuff." He simply said, "If you need anything, let me know." She nodded, left his office, and went straight to her computer. She spent the rest of the day focused, sketching ideas, and writing so fast she almost tore the paper. Meanwhile, her phone kept vibrating with messages from the real estate office. "You need to resolve your situation by tomorrow." She read it, locked the screen, and went to get some water, but her mouth still felt dry. By the end of the workday, the office was nearly empty. Sophie walked over with 2 chocolates in hand. "You're still here? New project? Are you planning to sleep here?" "I'm seriously considering it." Sophie placed a chocolate on her desk. "At least eat this. It helps keep your mood in check." Clara laughed. "Thanks. You're a lifesaver." After Sophie left, Clara decided to show Ethan her progress. She took the papers to his office, knocked, and walked in. "I put together a rough draft of my ideas. It's still in the early stages, but let me see." Ethan read carefully, made a few short comments, and nodded. "This is really good. You understand people, and that's rarer than you'd think." Clara forced a smile, but her mind was elsewhere. Ethan noticed. "Do you want to tell me what's going on?" Clara sighed. Then she just said it. "I'm about to be evicted. I have until tomorrow to pay the rent, but my salary isn't enough. And, well, that's it." Ethan didn't seem surprised. He simply took a blue folder from his drawer. "The company has a support program for situations like this. It's discreet and temporary. It's not charity, it's help for people who are working hard." Clara held the folder like it weighed a ton. "I don't know if I can accept this." "Why not?" "Because it hurts. It feels like I'm failing." "Accepting help isn't failing. It's just living with a little less weight on your shoulders." Silence. She closed the folder. "Can I think about it?" "Of course, but think carefully." That night, Clara got home with aching feet and a spinning head. She opened the folder, read everything, and realized it could cover her rent and a few small bills. It wasn't permanent, just a breather. "All right, I'll take the breather." The next day, she arrived early. She went straight to Ethan's office, folder in hand. "Good morning, good morning. I thought about it, and I accept." Ethan nodded. "Everything will be fine. Thank you. Now get back to work, we have a tight deadline." Clara smiled and left. Her steps felt lighter, and for the first time that week, she didn't feel as alone as she thought she was. On Monday, Clara arrived at work full of ideas, and a small feeling that maybe she could change something, even if it was just the background color of the presentation slides. She sat at her desk, opened her laptop, and took a deep breath. She had decided to structure the project the way she would want to understand it, clear, to the point, and with simple examples. As she typed, she chuckled at some of the comparisons she came up with. "Using this system should be as easy as making instant noodles, 3 steps, and you're done," she murmured, taking notes. Sophie walked by with a water bottle. "Talking to yourself already?" "Only when I have good ideas. Then I hope you start giving lectures." Clara spent the day working on a different kind of presentation, less technical, more practical. She mixed simple graphs with natural, conversational phrases. She swapped out complicated words for everyday comparisons. The more she worked, the more it made sense. In the afternoon, Ethan appeared beside her desk. "You look focused." "I am, but this is just the first draft. Can I see?" She turned the screen toward him. Ethan read it carefully, then looked at her. "This is excellent, really." Clara smiled, a little surprised. "I thought you'd find it too informal." "That's exactly what makes it good. It's clear, direct, and builds confidence." He paused. "I want you to come with me to present this at the technology fair in Chicago." Clara blinked. "A fair? In another state?" "Yes. The company has a booth there. I think your proposal will stand out. You have a different way of explaining things, and that's rare." She was silent for a few seconds. "I've never traveled for work before. This will be your first time, and we'll make it work." The week flew by. Clara was nervous but also excited. Sophie lent her a small bag and gave her some tips. "Just don't say into the microphone, okay? I promise I'll try." On Friday, Clara and Ethan met at the airport. The flight was smooth. They talked about light topics like songs that get stuck in your head and airplane food. "Every time I order chicken, I regret it," she said. "Every time I order pasta, I get an apology." In Chicago, they went straight to the hotel. The next day, they headed to the fair venue. Clara ran through her presentation with the team. At first, her voice was shaky, but she quickly relaxed. She spoke clearly, used simple examples, and saw several team members smiling. Ethan stood by, just observing. Later, one of the technical leads commented, "She has a knack for this. People understand her and actually pay attention." Clara pretended not to hear, but inside, she was thrilled. That evening, Ethan invited her to dinner, nothing formal, just to unwind after a good rehearsal. As long as it's not a fancy restaurant. "I'm still traumatized by that French place." Deal. They found a simple spot nearby. They ate something quick, talked about the event, what could go wrong, and laughed about it. "If I forget a part tomorrow, can I improvise?" she asked. "You can, just don't bring up instant noodles on stage." "Come on, that's my best comparison. We'll save it for next time." They walked back to the hotel at a slow pace. It was cold, and Clara crossed her arms. "I should have brought a thicker coat. Want mine?" "No, then you'll freeze, and it'll be my fault." They reached the hotel entrance. Ethan held the door for her. "Getting some rest?" "Yeah, if I don't sleep, I'll mix everything up tomorrow." "You'll do great. If I trip on stage, I'll pretend it was part of the plan. I'll be ready with the applause." Clara smiled and stepped into the elevator. As the doors closed, she let out a small sigh. Tomorrow was the big day, but for the first time, she didn't want to run away. Clara woke up with her heart racing. She checked her phone. 7:00 a.m. She had dreamed she was on stage, accidentally speaking French, and the microphone was off. She woke up in the middle of saying, "Croissant of data." She stretched slowly, got up, took a shower, and spent a moment staring at the mirror, as if it could give her advice. It didn't, so she spoke to herself instead. "It'll be fine. You practiced, and no one here knows you trip over your own feet." She went downstairs for breakfast and found Ethan already seated, drinking coffee with a notebook beside him. She grabbed some bread and sat down. "Did you sleep well?" he asked. "I dreamed I was a high-tech sleeping beauty, but with slides." "At least you got some sleep, more or less, but I'm ready, I think." Ethan smiled. "It'll be fine. You'll do great. Promise you won't leave me alone on stage?" "Promise, unless the stage collapses." "Great. I feel so safe now." Later, they arrived at the fair. The venue was crowded, but their presentation was in a reserved room. Clara went over everything one last time. She skimmed through her slides, took a deep breath. When the time came, Ethan did the introduction and then handed it over to her. Clara started with a slight tremor in her voice, but soon found her rhythm. She used simple examples, explained things calmly, and people laughed at the right moments. She saw some taking notes, others nodding along. Everything seemed to flow. At the end, they answered questions. One attendee praised the clarity of her explanation. Another said they had never understood the topic so well before. After they left the room, Ethan turned to her. "You were amazing." Clara smiled. "I didn't faint. That's already a win. And you even got a tech guy to laugh. That's rare." He laughed. "Really? I thought he was having back pain." Ethan chuckled. "Trust me, you did great." They spent the rest of the day talking to people at the fair, exchanging contacts, and gathering feedback. In the afternoon, they went back to the hotel to rest before dinner with part of the company team. Clara walked into her room, dropped her bag on a chair, and collapsed onto the bed. She grabbed her phone and sent a message to Sophie about how it went. The presentation was a success. "I'm still alive. I didn't trip." Ethan smiled 3 times. "Is this a miracle?" Sophie replied, "Of course it's a miracle and a sign. Enjoy this moment." After resting for a bit, Clara went down to the lobby. She found Ethan waiting near the elevator. "Ready for dinner?" he asked. "Hungry?" "Yes." "Socially energized?" "Maybe." They stepped into the elevator, just the two of them. Silence settled in quickly. Not an uncomfortable silence, but the kind that changes the air. Clara glanced at the numbers on the panel. Ethan remained quiet for a few seconds before speaking. "I'm proud of you today. Thank you. You helped me believe I could do it. It wasn't help. I just saw what was already there." Clara looked away for a moment, then turned back to Ethan. He looked at her too. They both smiled, but in a different way this time. The elevator suddenly stopped. Clara's eyes widened. "Was that what I think it was?" "Yes. Looks like it's stuck." "Is this some kind of joke from the universe? Maybe the universe likes playing with you?" Clara let out a nervous laugh. "All that's missing now is the lights going out." The lights flickered off for 2 seconds, then came back on. "You've got to be kidding me," she muttered. Ethan reached for the emergency button and pressed it. A voice answered from the other side, assuring them that the issue was being resolved. "Well, we're stuck. he said, leaning against the wall. Clara took a deep breath. Okay, no panic. I just have to pretend this is normal. Think of it as a dramatic pause in a movie. And you're the mysterious character. And you're the main character who talks too much when she's nervous. Not wrong. She looked at him. He looked back. This really does feel like a movie, she said. All that's missing is the kiss. Should we make this movie real? Ethan asked. Clara went silent, turning red like a tomato. They stared at each other for a few seconds. Ethan took a step closer. Clara felt her heart race, and that's when the elevator started moving again with a small jolt. Of course, right now, she said, looking up at the ceiling. Ethan laughed. The universe didn't want the cliché. The elevator reached the ground floor. The doors opened. They walked out side by side in silence, but both were smiling. Clara spoke first. So, should we pretend nothing happened? I'm not sure I want to pretend, but we can save that thought for after dinner. Deal. They left the hotel and headed to the restaurant. The night felt lighter, as if everything had taken on a new tone, and deep down, Clara knew that almost kiss wasn't really over. The flight back to New York was quiet, but not the bad kind of quiet. It was the comfortable kind. The kind when two people are thinking about the same things, but aren't quite ready to say them out loud. Clara gazed out the airplane window. The clouds drifted by slowly. Inside her mind, everything felt fast: the presentation, the trip, the almost kiss in the elevator. It was all there, swirling together like a movie she was still processing. Ethan, sitting beside her with headphones on, pretended to be watching a documentary, but every now and then, he glanced at her, and she knew. When the plane landed and they got a car back to the city, Clara tried to keep the conversation light. I need a week to process everything that happened. You can take 2 days off if you want, and miss the chance to find out if my nickname is still Miss Lettuce. Ethan smiled. It's not going anywhere. That kind of thing doesn't change easily. At the entrance of the office building, Clara hesitated for a second before stepping inside. Should we just pretend it was a regular business trip? If that's what you want, sure. I'm not sure if I want that, but it's easier for now. Then it's a deal. On Monday, Clara returned to the office as if walking into familiar territory, but now it felt like she had an invisible sign around her neck that read, "Being watched." It didn't take long to notice the looks, people whispering by the water cooler, colleagues exchanging amused smiles when she walked by. Sophie was the first to bring it up directly. I know everything. Clara didn't even need to ask. Everything about what, exactly? That you and Ethan got stuck in the elevator, and that there was almost a kiss. That story is spreading through the office like free coffee. Clara's eyes widened. What? How? Someone from the trip saw you two coming out of the elevator, looking, let's say, smiling. The news turned into a story. The story turned into office gossip, but no one saw anything. Nothing happened. But it could have happened, and that's even more interesting. Clara sighed. Great. Now I'm the main character of a corporate rumor. At least you're a likable main character. Clara tried to ignore it, she really did. But throughout the week, she noticed the way her colleagues looked at her differently, as if she had leveled up without trying, and that made her uncomfortable. She didn't want to be remembered for a potential romance scene in an elevator. She wanted to be remembered for the project, for the presentation, for her work, and more than anything, she wanted to figure out what she was feeling. Ethan seemed different too. He was still professional and attentive, but there was a new ease in their interactions. When they passed each other in the hallway, their eyes met for just a second longer, but they never talked about the trip or the almost kiss until one day, after a long afternoon of meetings, Clara took the elevator alone. Ethan stepped in just as the doors were closing. They stood there in silence. Clara pressed the button for her floor. Ethan kept his hands in his pockets. They avoided looking at each other, as if the small space between them was neutral ground. I heard we're becoming an office legend, she said, breaking the silence. I heard that too. And you're not going to say anything? I'd rather not add fuel to the rumors, but if you want, I can put out an official statement. Nothing happened in the elevator. Signed. The parties involved. Clara smiled. I think that would only make people more curious. Probably. Silence again. The doors opened. They stepped out together. I need to talk to you later, Ethan said. About the project? That too. Clara just nodded. She walked back to her desk, her heart racing more than she wanted to admit. The next morning, Ethan asked her to come to his office. Clara walked in, sat down, and waited. Ethan closed his laptop and looked at her. "First, I want to thank you. The project was a success. The board approved the format. Your proposal will be implemented in the new campaign." "Really?" She smiled, surprised. "That's incredible. And it's because of you. You made it work. You brought a new approach. And more than that, you got people's attention." Clara took a deep breath. "I'm happy to hear that. I really put in the effort. And one more thing," he continued. "About everything people have been saying, I don't want it to affect you or your reputation here. It already is a little. How do you feel about that?" She thought for a moment, looked at him, confused. "I never imagined that well, that I'd care so much about what people say, but I do. And I don't want to just be the elevator girl. You never were, really, Clara. You're one of the smartest and most creative people who've ever worked here, and that's not an exaggeration." She was silent for a moment. "Thank you. I needed to hear that," Ethan nodded. "And if you ever want to talk about anything, I'm here." Clara stood up. "Maybe one day, but right now, I need to finish a report." "Of course." She left his office, her mind spinning. She had gotten everything she wanted: recognition, results, respect, but what she felt when she looked at Ethan didn't fit into any report. That same day, Sophie showed up at Clara's desk with a curious smile. "So, did he talk to you?" "He did, about the project and the rumors and nothing." "Everything stayed the same?" Sophie looked doubtful. "But is that what you wanted?" Clara sighed. "I don't know what I want. Sometimes you just need time or a new elevator." Clara laughed. "For now, I think I'll take the stairs." Clara didn't know what was worse: the company's gala invitation or the fact that she had only 3 days to find something to wear. The invitation came by email with elegant lettering and the word "formal" underlined. She read it 3 times to make sure it wasn't spam, then sighed and walked over to Sophie's desk. "Did you see this? The gala?" "Of course. And before you ask, I already have a dress booked, a salon appointment, and picked out my nail color." "Of course you did. And are you going?" "I don't know. The invitation is nice, but my bank account isn't." Sophie gave her a determined look. "You're going, and you're wearing one of my dresses. But you're taller, and you know how to sew. You'll make it work." 3 days later, Clara was in the office bathroom, struggling with the zipper of Sophie's dress. It wasn't a perfect fit, but she could move mostly. She looked at her shoes, a simple pair of heels she had saved for special occasions. The left heel already had a suspicious tilt, but it was all she had. "This will be fine," she told herself, staring into the mirror. "It's just a party with music, fancy food, and people who make 3 times my salary. No big deal." When she arrived at the venue, it felt like stepping into a movie. There were lights everywhere, people chatting with drinks in hand, and soft instrumental music in the background. She walked carefully, trying to look natural and not trip over her own feet. "Clara." She turned. It was Ethan, with a slight smile. "I," she said, adjusting the strap of her dress. "You look normal, I mean, elegant, but normal for someone who's always elegant." "Thank you, I think." "You look different in a good way." Clara gave a nervous smile. "The dress is Sophie's, and my heel might break at any moment. Then let's walk slowly." The two of them walked over to a table. They chatted with some team members, laughed at comments about the fair and the project, and tried to ignore the subtle glances. For most of the party, Clara stayed close to Ethan, but without overdoing it. She watched the groups of executives, Ethan's elegant ex-girlfriends, who looked like they came straight out of magazines, and tried to stay confident. Sophie showed up later, holding a drink and smiling. "You're doing great. You haven't spilled anything. You haven't tripped. That's already a success. There's still half an hour left. A lot can go wrong. Relax. And don't worry. So far, everyone's only said good things about you." Clara glanced to the side. Ethan was talking to 2 partners, but at that moment, he looked at her. Their eyes met for a second. She quickly looked away and took a deep breath. A little later, she felt something strange under her foot. Her left heel was wobbling more than it should. She tried to keep her composure, but when she took a small step to the side, she heard a snap. "Oh no," she whispered. "What is it?" Sophie asked. "My heel gave out. It's crooked. Can you walk?" "Only if I waddle like a penguin. Come with me." Sophie discreetly led her to a quiet corner of the garden next to the hall. There were fewer people there, and it felt calmer. "Stay here. I'll see if I can find a spare pair of shoes with the event team. You're always so prepared. Somebody has to be." While she waited, Clara sat on a nearby bench. trying to hide her broken shoe and keep her dignity intact. That's when Ethan appeared. "Everything okay? More or less. My heel broke literally. Do you need help making a run for it? If I leave now, I'd at least like to walk straight, but I don't think that's possible." Ethan sat down beside her. "I thought you were shining in there, and then you disappeared. Because my shoe betrayed me, and I didn't want to become the talk of the night. I think you already are, but in a good way." She looked at him. "Are you sure I am?" They sat in silence for a few seconds. The sounds of the party felt distant. "Do you remember when we met?" she asked. "Of course. How could I forget? I was adjusting my bra in the reflection of your car window, and you had lettuce in your teeth. Why did you hire me again? Because you're exactly what this company needed, and maybe what I needed too." She stayed quiet. Her heart raced. Ethan turned toward her. "Clara," but before he could say anything else, Sophie reappeared, holding a pair of flats. Mission accomplished. Clara stood up, took off her broken heels, and slipped on the flats with relief. "You saved me." "Always." Ethan watched with a smile as Clara walked more confidently again. "There, now I can go back with dignity, or dance," Ethan suggested. "I don't know if I'm ready for that. We just have to make it to the center of the dance floor. The rest we can improvise." Clara hesitated for a second. "All right, but if I step on your foot, blame the broken heel." They walked to the center of the room. The music had slowed down. Ethan held out his hand. Clara hesitated, then took it. They started dancing slowly, no rehearsed steps. Just two colleagues trying to keep in sync. "This is starting to feel like one of those movie scenes," she said. "All that's missing is the ending." Clara laughed, but didn't say anything. She just kept dancing, her heart a little lighter, her gaze locked on his. And at that moment, nothing felt broken anymore. Not the heel, not her confidence. Maybe, for the first time, even her heart felt whole. The following Monday, Clara arrived at the office with the feeling that something had changed, but she wasn't sure what exactly. Maybe it was the way Ethan looked at her when they said goodbye that night, or the way she couldn't stop thinking about the moment they danced together, or maybe it was just the effect of wearing flats all night. She tried to focus on work. She answered emails, reviewed spreadsheets, and organized a new proposal, but every time Ethan walked by, she froze. The words in her head got all mixed up. "He's just your boss," she muttered to herself. "A boss who dances well and knows how to give compliments without sounding forced, but still just a boss." Sophie noticed her odd behavior by the second day. "You're avoiding me, aren't you?" "It's not you, it's my head. Is it, Ethan?" Clara made a face. "And if it is? Did something happen after the party?" Clara thought before answering. "Not exactly, but everything felt too close, literally." Sophie gave her a knowing smile. "So you're afraid you really like him?" "Maybe I already do, and maybe he doesn't see it the same way." "And what has he done since the party?" "Nothing, no message, no note, no comment, like nothing ever happened." Sometimes silence says more than we wanted it to. In the days that followed, Clara started to pull away, not on purpose. It was more of a defense mechanism. She stopped having lunch at the usual time. She began sending reports by email instead of delivering them in person. When she needed to talk to Ethan, she kept the conversations short and to the point. Ethan noticed, of course, but he didn't say anything either. Then, on a rainy Thursday morning, he walked into the room where Clara was meeting with the team and gave a short presentation to the entire department. He talked about the company's progress, the new projects, and then he said, "But none of this would have happened without a team that believes in simplicity and without people who see beyond the rules." Clara looked at him. He was looking straight at her. "Betting on people who don't fit the mold was the best decision we made this year, and we're going to keep doing it." Everyone applauded. Clara stood still for a few seconds, trying to process it. After the meeting, Sophie pulled her aside. "That was for you, and everyone saw it. He didn't say my name. He didn't have to." But instead of feeling relieved, Clara felt even more confused. She didn't know what to do with that kind of public recognition. It sounded nice, of course, but it also felt incomplete. And then, as if the universe wanted to complicate things even more, that same afternoon, she received an invitation to a conference in another city. She had been selected to represent the company, lead a panel, and speak about simple innovation. The invitation had been approved by the board and by Ethan. Clara walked into his office, holding the printed email in her hands. "Did you know about this?" "I did. I thought it would be a great opportunity for you. A whole week away." You'll be representing the company, but also yourself, everything you've built here." Clara hesitated. "Is this your way of pushing me away?" Ethan looked at her, surprised. "Of course not. Why would you think that?" "Because we haven't really talked since the party. Because everything feels strange. Silence." "I just thought you needed space," he finally said. "And I thought you'd changed your mind about everything." "I never did. I just didn't know how to move forward without pressuring you." Clara stared at the floor. "Maybe I do need to travel to think." Ethan nodded. "If you decide to go, we'll support you." She left his office with a mind full of thoughts. She spent the rest of the day trying to ignore them. The next morning, she confirmed the trip. During the week away, Clara tried to focus on the event. She attended meetings, watched presentations, delivered her panel successfully. She received praise, made contacts, got invited to new projects. But despite all of that, she still felt like something was missing, or rather, someone was missing. Every time something went well, she thought, "Ethan would like this." Every time she saw something funny, she thought, "I wish I could tell him about this." She didn't send him any messages. He didn't send any either. But every day she checked her phone, hoping for a notification. On the last day of the trip, Sophie called her on video. "I need to update you. What happened? Ethan is more serious than ever. He's too focused and quieter. That's your fault. I just went to work somewhere else for a week." "Exactly. And it feels like the whole company noticed." "Sophie, what if I come back and nothing has changed?" "Then you deal with it, but at least you'll know you tried." Clara hung up and stared out the hotel window. The city was beautiful, but it felt too far away from everything that mattered. The following Monday, she returned to the office. She walked into the building with steady steps, but a racing heart. The elevator felt slower than usual. When she reached her floor, she was greeted with hugs, smiles, and a few jokes. "The company was way too quiet without you," one colleague said. "I didn't think I made that much noise. It was the good kind of noise." When she got to her desk, she saw an envelope. It was a note. "You were missed, E." She held the paper for a few seconds, then carefully folded it and put it away. She felt an urge to run straight to Ethan's office, but she didn't. Instead, she sat at her computer and took a deep breath. Clara tried to focus, organizing data for the new campaign, when something unusual caught her eye on the company calendar. Alignment meeting, creative team and CEO, attendees, Clara Kim. She frowned. It wasn't common to have a meeting with the CEO on a random Tuesday without prior notice, especially one that seemed to involve only her. She got up from her chair and walked to the meeting room, where the conversation would take place. When she entered, Ethan was already there, sitting at the table with 2 cups of coffee. "Hi, Clara," he said with a calm smile. "Have a seat for a moment." She sat down, a bit wary. "This doesn't feel like a normal meeting." "Because it's not, actually. I just wanted to talk." She stayed silent, waiting. "I thought a lot about how to ask you here, without making it seem awkward, but then I realized we've been through far more embarrassing situations than a simple invitation to talk. I agree, especially if we think about lipsticks, bras, and car windows." They laughed together. It was funny how time made everything feel lighter. "The truth is, Clara, I really admire you not just for what you do, but for how you do it, the way you think, the way you handle situations, the way you turn confusion into clarity. And I have to admit, over time, this has started to feel more personal." She looked into his eyes. There was no hesitation in his voice, only sincerity. "I'm not someone who opens up easily," Ethan continued. "But with you, it was different, and it made me realize that maybe it's time to stop overthinking things." Clara took a deep breath. She knew she had to say something too. "I spent a long time convincing myself that all of this was just part of work, that it was better to pretend. Nothing was happening, that I didn't feel anything. But deep down I knew. And if I stayed quiet for a while, it was just fear." Ethan gave a small nod, as if he understood. "Fear of what?" "That it was all in my head, that I was mistaking attention for interest or compliments for affection. But now I know better." She placed her hands on the table, a simple gesture, without drama. "I like you too, Ethan." The silence between them wasn't uncomfortable. It was full of meaning. "So," he said, resting his arms on the table, "what do we do now?" "Well, you're great at making plans. What do you suggest? That we take things slow, but that we don't pretend nothing is happening." Clara smiled. "That sounds fair. And maybe we could go out to dinner, not as colleagues, not as boss and employee, just as two adults trying to figure out what they're feeling. As long as it's not at one of those places where the menu has no prices. I promised to pick a restaurant with readable prices. Clara laughed. And no elevators for now? Deal. Before she left the room, Ethan handed her a small box. Clara opened it, expecting something formal, but inside was a keychain in the shape of a mirror with an engraved phrase, "Warning, may contain lettuce and feelings." She started laughing before she even finished reading it. Is this real? It is custom made. You really took the joke all the way. I prefer to think of it as style. Clara put the keychain in her bag with a big smile. Can I say something? Of course. This is the corniest and sweetest thing I've ever received. Ethan gave a small, satisfied bow. My mission is complete. Clara stood up. And now? Now you go back to work. One do two. And later, I'll send you an address. Promise it won't be a restaurant with a French name. CEO's word. Clara left the room feeling lighter. There was no kiss, no public declaration, but there was something even better. There was truth. The months that followed were nothing like Clara had imagined a relationship would be. She and Ethan took things slow. A dinner here, a walk there, nothing grand at first, and maybe that's what made it so good. At work, they kept things professional, but it was impossible not to notice the knowing glances, the quiet smiles, and the strategically timed messages. Clara would laugh to herself when she found notes stuck to her computer screen that said things like, "Meeting at 11:00 a.m., bring coffee and smiles," or "Emergency plan, lunch together, bring your appetite and your charm." Sophie, of course, knew everything, but she respected their space. Every now and then, she'd just comment with a knowing smile. You two hide it well, but not that well. Clara felt like life was finally falling into place. No more doubts, no more fears. She felt secure and loved. Ethan, on the other hand, seemed lighter. He still worked with the same dedication as always, but now there was a different spark in his eyes, a kind of peace that only someone who has found what they were looking for can have. Weekends became just for them a museum visit here, a walk in the park there, a disastrous recipe attempt in the kitchen. They'd laugh at their mistakes and celebrate their small victories, like successfully putting together an entire piece of furniture without losing their patience. Clara discovered that Ethan knew how to make pancakes and that he loved bad sci-fi movies. Ethan discovered that Clara collected mugs with funny quotes and that she talked to herself when she was nervous. One day, while watching the two of them walking hand in hand in the park, an elderly man approached and said, "When love is simple, it lasts longer." They just smiled, because that was exactly how they felt: simple love, yet full of meaning. A few months later, Ethan invited Clara for a weekend out of town. He said he needed to disconnect for a bit and knew a peaceful place. Clara agreed, thinking it was just a small trip. She packed comfortable clothes, having no idea what was waiting for her. They arrived at a charming wooden cabin, surrounded by trees and overlooking a lake. Everything was calm. Quiet time seemed to move slower there. On the second day, Ethan suggested a boat ride. Clara, who had never been on a boat before, hesitated but agreed. In the middle of the lake, with the sun turning the water golden, Ethan stopped rowing. "It's so beautiful," she said, looking around. "I waited for the right moment to do this," he replied, reaching into his pocket. Clara turned to him and saw a small blue velvet box. "Ethan, I didn't prepare a long speech, because everything I want to say, you already know. I admire you, I respect you, and I love you more than I ever thought I could love someone. You changed everything. You taught me to laugh at my mistakes, to not take myself so seriously, to believe that a simple life can still be extraordinary." He opened the box, a simple ring, but with just enough sparkle to bring tears to her eyes. "Clara Kim, will you marry me?" She covered her mouth with her hand, laughed, then cried. "Yes, of course, yes." He slipped the ring on her finger, and there, in the middle of the lake, with the world completely silent, they held each other. No fireworks, no audience, just a yes, and that was everything. The wedding took place 3 months later. It was on a quiet beach at sunset. Clara wore a light dress, her hair loose in the wind, and a smile she couldn't hide. Ethan wore a white shirt, calm on the outside, but his eyes were more emotional than ever. Sophie was there, of course, and she cried before the ceremony even started. Close friends, co-workers, and family gathered for a simple ceremony full of meaning. As Clara walked toward Ethan, she didn't think about tripping, or the wind in her hair, or what others were seeing. She only thought about how, in that walk, she was moving toward the love she had always dreamed of, even when she thought she didn't deserve it. Ethan held her hands firmly. "Today, I promise to make you laugh, even on the hard days," he said, his voice trembling. "And I promise never to adjust my bra in a car window again," she replied, making everyone laugh. They exchanged vows, rings, and a kiss that sealed not just their love, but the journey that had brought them there. The reception was light-hearted, filled with music, dancing, and inside jokes. Ethan took off his shoes right at the start. Clara received a new mug with the inscription, "The Lady of the Mirror and the Lettuce." They ran to the ocean and dipped their feet in the water, because that's how they did everything with lightness and a touch of adventure. A few months later, Clara prepared a surprise. She waited for Ethan to come home from work. She was nervous, her hands sweaty, holding a simple package. "I got you something," she said, handing it to him. He opened it, curious. It was a t-shirt. On the front, the words, "Dad in Training." Ethan went silent. Then he looked at her, his eyes filled with tears. "Really?" Clara nodded, tears forming in her own eyes. 2 months. He pulled her into a tight hug, laughed, then cried, then laughed again. "You're joking. I'm not. There's a little heartbeat here, half mine, half yours. This is... He tried to speak but couldn't. He kissed her forehead, then her barely noticeable belly. "This is the best gift of my life. Better than pancakes? So much better." They stayed there, holding each other, feeling the love between them.